Hello, my name is Suzanne and welcome to my first attempt at one of those YouTube video essay things.
The current year of recording this is 2026. We're now 40 years on from 1986, an iconic year for pop culture, sport and technology. This also marks the 40-year anniversary of the launch of the BBC Master Compact home computer. My dad bought this particular model for our family in December 1986, and as it turns out, I'm still in possession of it. After several decades being stored up in the loft, I think it's fair to say the BBC Master Compact could now be regarded as something of an antique. Think of the 1984 Apple Macintosh sitting in the antique shop window from Back to the Future Part 2. I remember first seeing that scene with no idea just how quickly technology was about to advance. It seemed laughable at the time, but I can now see the computers of this era really are very primitive in relation to what we have now, and dare I say what we take for granted today. Despite being out of sight and out of mind for so long, I've never quite brought myself to part with it. Before I decide upon its fate, whether I keep it, consider listing it on eBay, or donate it to a computer collector, I thought I'd take a look through the manuals, load up some of the original software, and maybe delete a few of the more embarrassing BBC Basic programs I wrote as a kid. But of course, getting ahead of myself here, just seeing if it still works would be a start. Whether you grew up with a BBC computer, or whether you've never seen one before, I hope this video offers a fascinating little glimpse into an era where 128 kilobytes of RAM, a floppy disk drive, and an 8-colour display felt like the cutting edge of home computing. Here are a few photos from Christmas 1986. In the days before digital photography, people tended to be much more selective about taking pictures. In this second photo, I'm watching my brother type something on our exciting new computer whilst our grandmother leans in for a closer look. When my dad bought the BBC Master Compact, home computers were becoming increasingly common, but they still weren't something every household owned. Buying one was a significant financial investment, and for many families, it was seen as an investment in education too. Looking through the original brochures and manuals from the 1980s, you get a sense of what was being promised. Educational software covered everything from maths and reading games to learning foreign languages. One particular French program seemed especially determined to make sure you could pronounce the word aubergine correctly. There was software for managing household finances, building simple databases, and writing letters. Word processing was handled by programs such as View and spreadsheets with ViewSheet, long before Microsoft Word became the standard it is today. But the thing I'm most excited to talk about is the games. Until then, my experience of video games had been mainly the machines in arcades. Suddenly we had a way of playing versions of those games at home whenever we wanted. Looking back, some of them were fairly simple arcade clones, but they felt absolutely magical to me at the time. I plan to cover these in more depth in separate dedicated videos. Before I show you the BBC Master Compact itself, it's worth mentioning that it wasn't the first BBC computer. In fact, it was the last machine released by Acorn as part of the BBC Computer Literacy Project. It all began with the BBC Micro Model A in 1981. Shortly afterwards came the more capable Model B, with a very similar appearance, but inside had double the RAM from 16 kilobytes to 32 kilobytes. This quickly became the best-known version. Then, in 1986, came the BBC Master series. This included the Master 128, the Master ET, network models for schools and businesses, and finally the BBC Master Compact, a sleeker, more home-oriented design, and the computer my family ended up owning. The BBC Micro soon became a familiar sight in schools across the UK during the 1980s. At my infant and junior school, there was just one computer for the entire school. It travelled from classroom to classroom on a rotor, sitting on its own wheeled trolley and usually hidden beneath a blanket to keep the dust off. We also had just one television, again sat on its own trolley, complete with lockable wooden doors that closed over the screen. Whilst I could happily disappear down a rabbit hole of 1980s school memories, it's best to get back to the topic of this video and take a look at the machine itself. Like many of the computers of the 1980s, the BBC Master Compact had that distinctive beige or cream kind of look. The plastic on the exterior has now turned a yellowish colour with age. This model came with a colour monitor capable of displaying 8 colours, which was pretty impressive at the time. Below the screen is the on switch, and next to this was a flip-down panel with some analog controls to adjust colour balance and contrast. The monitor sat neatly on top of the computer unit, complete with an integrated 3.5-inch disk drive. Other computers at the time would have a separate unit for cassettes or floppy disks. Ah yes, floppy disks. There was no internal hard drive like in today's computers. All the software and files you wanted to save or load would live on these disks. And why the name floppy when the disks for this computer were contained within a hard plastic outer shell? This was because disks from earlier computers were made from a thin magnetic material and could be gently bent or flexed. The name just stuck. These ones are much sturdier than the older floppy disks, but I'd still recommend not trying to make it bend. In the corner of each disk was a slidable plastic tab to set the disk to be read-only or not. Interestingly, although floppy disks have disappeared from everyday use, they still live on as the save icon in many programs. Designers call this skeuomorphism, where modern technology keeps design elements from older technology. We still say we'll dial phone numbers, even though phones no longer have a dial on them. And many camera apps still make a mechanical shutter sound, even though there's no moving shutter. Or the sound of an old cash register being used as the eBay sell noise. I do love hearing that noise. This is a view of the back and underneath the computer unit. Onto the keyboard, like the monitor and computer unit, was in that beige and cream plastic. It was a detached keyboard, unlike the all-in-one style of the Electron or Spectrum. You'll notice function keys along the top of the keyboard are coloured red. The arrow keys in a slightly brown-grey colour plastic arranged in a compass shape at the top of the keyboard. There was the return key, the equivalent of the enter key. Copy and delete keys were under the return key. In the bottom left of the keyboard, there are 3 red LEDs to indicate the power being on, and also if you have caps lock or shift lock on. Caps lock and shift lock buttons appear above this. The shift keys have the word shift printed on them as opposed to an upward pointing arrow icon. Same with tab. It has the word tab on it instead of arrow icons. Escape has the word printed in full and not just ESC. The keyboard is the QWERTY layout with numbers 1 to 0 above, but compared to a standard keyboard of today, the symbol placements above the number row, the hash, the quote and @ symbols aren't where you'd expect them to be. And a break key, a very BBC thing. Holding the shift key down and pressing and releasing the break key was how you would boot a disk. Pressing break alone would interrupt or reset a program. A mouse was available, but we never owned one. For us, everything was controlled by keyboard commands. But we did have a joystick with its 3 red buttons that worked with a lot of games. And at one point we also had a dot matrix printer. It used those continuous paper reels with holes down the sides. I don't have the printer anymore, but the manual was still lurking about in the pile of all the manuals and related leaflets. Like many home computers of the time, the Master Compact came with a welcome manual and disc. One of the first recommended things you were told to do is to make a backup copy of the welcome disc. I still have this here with my dad's handwriting on the label. Rather than containing just one program, it was a collection of software designed to introduce new owners to the machine. It included demonstrations, a couple of games, and a variety of applications, giving you a taste of what the computer could do straight out of the box. The manual has chapters on how to get started, talks through some of the software such as calculator and notepad applications, a whole section dedicated to the BBC Basic Programming Language, my first introduction to programming, and a topic to be covered in a little more depth in a separate video, sections on ABC and View, the 2 word processors, an introduction to using files and directories or folders, and a guide to expansions such as connecting printers or joysticks.
I would like to read to you. I'm reading from here straight away. I'd like to read to you the opening forward from this manual. And bear in mind, I'm just reading it from here, which is ridiculous. I don't even look at the camera. Okay.
But also this manual, you'd want to show it.
I do want to show it.
Almost.
I would like to read to you the opening forward from this manual, bearing in mind that this was written in 1986, which I may have mentioned 1 or 2 times. A few years ago, the suggestion that you might have a computer in your own home would have been greeted with disbelief. Now, home computers are an accepted fact, and more people are beginning to investigate their potential. Thankfully, the intervening years have seen many developments, and today's microcomputers offer real computing power, making them suitable for use not only in the home, but also in classrooms, laboratories, and our increasingly automated offices. BBC microcomputer systems have been available throughout this period of change, and, as a result of a process of continuous development, they span a wide range of facilities and sophistication whilst maintaining software compatibility. This ensures that with the arrival of new models, there does not come an enforced wait for software with which to put the machine to work. The computer you have just purchased is provided with some of the most highly developed software for the BBC microcomputer range, and there are literally thousands of other programs which can potentially be used on your computer. Welcome to the world of personal computing.
To go with the ABC and View word processors mentioned earlier, we also had a strip of card with icons that specifically relate to these programs, like a cheat sheet, to indicate what each of the function keys would do when running them. The ABC was designed to be aimed at younger users, aged 7 and upwards, so the brightly coloured symbols fitted in well with that audience in mind. In the instructions here, we have a wholesome example letter writing thank you to your Auntie Edna for the socks she bought you for Christmas, a hint for her to buy you some programs for your new computer next year, and how to save and load a file. On the reverse side are the function button commands for View, a more advanced word processor also included on the welcome disc, more sophisticated and designed for adults. The example letter in these instructions is not on Christmas socks, but about a finance application. Unfortunately for those curious about computer hardware, I'm not going to be opening up the machine to show you the insides. That's not really my area of expertise. I've always been much more comfortable exploring software than delving into circuit boards and chips. So let's now get to the cliffhanger part. Let's see what happened when I tried to switch it on. The fact that I've been describing some of the welcome disk software and not showing you actual footage could be a bit of a clue.
Doesn't sound good. Oh my god. Let's try again. This does not sound good at all. It's not supposed to do that. Oh dear. Oh my god, is there going to be a video? I don't know. Holy crap. This is not supposed to happen! Come on. Right, let's maybe try a different disc. Oh my god. How about... try this disc. See if this does anything different. Calm yourself. Disc error. Oh my god. This is what happens if you just get stored in the cupboard for like 30 years. Oh. Oh. Let's try the welcome disc. Oh my god. Not a good idea. It seems that the whole idea of doing a video on the BBC is completely in doubt now. There must be so much dust in here. It sounds like a car trying to rev up. Oh my god! Hallelujah! Here we are! It's working! Oh, right, so we can see on the screen Acorn Moss, Acorn ADFS, and Basic. So Acorn. Oh, what was it? Where's my script? I wasn't expecting it to. Let me just get my script up and running.
The joy was quite short-lived as errors started to appear on the screen again. I managed the obligatory print hello, enter hello.
Okay.
I tried a few games and managed to get the opening titles of Repton 2 working.
Nah, Repton is not working.
So to conclude, after all of that, it sadly isn't working anymore. I did, however, speak to the lovely people at the Museum of Computing in Swindon, and they assured me it could be repaired and maybe one day get it working again. And as for how am I going to show you the games, you know, the part that I'm really excited about, I found that thankfully on the World Wide Web there is a website called bbcmicro.co.uk that has replicas of most of the software. So for anyone who is interested in seeing some of these old games, this is my go-to place. I'll be covering some of my favourite, most beloved games in other videos. When I briefly did load up the screen successfully, it said on it Acorn Moss, Acorn ADFS, Basic, and then there was an angle bracket and prompt. So to break this down, Acorn Moss stands for Machine Operating System that powers the computer. ADFS is the Advanced Disk Filing System. This replaced the older DFS and allowed for longer file names of up to 10 characters and nested directories. Basic is the program language built into the computer. And finally, the angle bracket prompt. This is where you type your commands. Think of it a little like a simplified terminal or an early ancestor of the developer console. And I also think this is a good place to leave our whistle-stop tour of the BBC Master Compact. If there really is anyone out there still awake and watching, please look out for my planned follow-up videos where I'll be taking a close look at BBC Basic and revisiting some ancient 8-bit games. This will include a look at Repton, the BBC mascot, coin-op conversions, a game that was so scary it used to make me cry, text-based games, and many others. Thank you very much for watching, and bye for now.